I want to talk to you about reading. I have a young preschooler who is reading fluently, and it never ceases to amaze me. And I think to myself, he just did it. He's amazing. He just learned it. And then when I sort of stopped and thought about the process and how he got to where he is today, reading really books that are made for first graders as a 3-year-old, I realized that there really was a progression and that I should share it because um, he is my fourth child, and all of my kids have kind of gone through these phases of literacy. And um, it became easier and easier for me as a mom to facilitate the literacy process, the learning process, the joy of reading for each child as I learn more and more about how it works and what what makes kids enjoy books. So um, I think the main thing to know is that it's really not about what age a kid is, it's about when they're interested. So you just have to observe your child and find those little windows of opportunity. Find when they are interested in looking at books and capitalize on that. Sit on the couch and just spend time looking at books with them whenever they want to, whenever you find something that's an interesting topic. But thinking about my son's journey to literacy, it really began when he started potty training. So he was just about turning 2, and he was ready, showing signs of readiness to begin the learning process of going potty. And for us in our house, that means you sit on the potty and read a lot of books. And you read a lot of books like this one, right? We got several of these, and you know what? I bought these at Goodwill and a store called Once Upon a Child. We checked some out from the library as well, and I have read these hundreds of times. He just loved them. He thought they were so interesting, and they were developmentally appropriate. They were interesting because they were his life story, the things that he was learning and mastering. This one is particularly clever. It's really fun. It's got superheroes that teach all of the different skills of going potty, and it has comics and jokes. Anyway, but I wanted to show him what was going on in his body. Like, what makes pee pee and poo poo exactly? So then I started reading him these body books where they have some interesting pictures. Lift the Flap books about like your kidneys and how urine is produced and your intestines and how poo poo is made. And this page right here, we must have sat and talked about a whole bunch of times because it was so fun to talk about how the food goes in your mouth, it goes down your throat to your tummy and all around your intestines and then comes out in the potty. And it was just a very natural progression as he was learning this developmental skill to want to read books about what was going on in his body and in his life. So he became obsessed with his body book. And the one that he was obsessed with was actually a library book. I do not have it anymore, but there are lots of editions of this DK nonfiction called The Human Body. He started with a little tiny green one that he just loved, and he wanted to know everything about it. And I just asked Grandma and Grandpa to buy one for him. This book is incredible. It has the muscles, it has the bones, it has all the organs of the body and how they work, with fantastic pictures and just enough information to make it interesting, but not too much information to be overwhelming or make it boring. We really loved the one about pregnancy and the baby inside, and he loved talking about that. But this was a book I read to my 2-year-old. This was his 2-year-old birthday present. A nonfiction book about the human body. And he loved it. He was obsessed with it for maybe about a month. And then, you know what? He was done. He doesn't look at this book anymore. Not very often. But while we were on the anatomy kick, and then while I was doing some training as a yoga teacher, he also enjoyed looking at some of these adult nonfiction anatomy books that have really beautiful illustrations of the muscles and the anatomy of the body. So anyway, that's kind of where my son's reading journey began. And I think it's partly because he was exposed to literacy in such depth with these anatomy books, and he really got absorbed in the illustrations and what they were explaining. He wanted to know all about the illustrations, and he wanted to know what the pictures meant. It's interesting. Nonfiction books are so interesting to kids and adults alike. I really love learning from the nonfiction section from the children's department of the library. So that's where our literacy journey began, and I am going to do a whole series of YouTube videos about how I taught my preschooler to read and what books were the most useful, like, categories of books, and kind of in what order we learned them. So this is the first. The first was the body books, and that's when he really started to be interested in learning from books and gaining information and knowledge and just wanting to understand everything that was on the page. So that's where we started our literacy journey.